The body is an electrical system, and unless we optimize our environment to allow our hormone pathways to work better, our metabolism to work properly, then we're really missing the boat.
Well, hi everyone, welcome back to Pushing the Limits. Today I have the lovely Dr. Vanessa Ingraham. Welcome to the show, Vanessa. Fantastic to have you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Been such an admirer and fan of yours, so it's so cool to meet you and have this conversation on camera,
Well,
even.
I'm just stoked to find a doctor in New Zealand who's just so aligned with everything that I like to talk about. So we're going to have fun today. Two girls talking about our favorite topic. Before we get underway, Dr. Vanessa, can you just give us a little bit of your background and how you got here and where you come from, the exotic place that you come from?
Yeah, well, actually, despite my accent, I'm not American. I'm actually from the Bahamas. So I was born and grew up in Nassau, Bahamas. Went away to school in North America and then came home and was practicing with my father, who was a basically started off in kind of conventional medicine, traditional MD. And then actually it's a kind of a cool full circle how it worked. When I had my first vaccine, I had a very bad vaccine injury to the just a standard DPT shot.
Yep.
And so my dad, who was practicing a lot of pediatrics, a lot of well baby visits, this really shook him because, he was just doing what he was taught, following the party line, and not really questioning anything. And so when that happened, he kind of really pivoted, it took a big sabbatical and kind of went to learn about all different other forms of healing and what health and wellness really is, and then started questioning everything. So fast forward 30 years later, he was probably the first and one of the best known holistic or integrative doctors in the Bahamas.
Wow.
So I was so lucky when I came back because I actually wanted to be a veterinarian. And that's another side note. I was in the States when 9/11 happened, studying to
Oh,
be a
wow.
large animal vet. 9/11 happened, all the student visas got pulled. We had to reapply.
Oh,
Couldn't get back into the programs. Ended up doing human medicine. Ended up being a naturopathic physician. So when I came back to the Bahamas, I worked with my dad. And it was just a fantastic few years, kind of learning from him. And then had a patient in our clinic one day, and he had a funny accent. I was thinking, oh, is he from the UK? Is he South African? My only concept of New Zealand at that point was Flight of the Conchords. That's the only thing I knew. And sheep, okay. And so I met this gentleman, and he became a client of mine. And long story short, he was the founder of a company called Cookie Time in New Zealand, which Michael Mail, and who had a bit of a midlife midlife crisis, thinking, I've promoted sugar and unhealthy food to all these Kiwi kids. I want to do something good. And so he started a company called Nutrient Rescue. And I was
Mhm.
lucky enough to come on board. He brought me to New Zealand and I did the
Wow.
initial formulations for Nutrient Rescue and fell in love with someone in New Zealand and the country itself and basically never left. So that's how I got.
Wonderful. We got to claim you and keep you. That's
Yeah.
great. Wow, that's quite a story. And well done to him for putting back into, after selling bookie times for a long time, which a lot of kids love, including myself back in the day. But to actually go and do something really positive in the world, that's fantastic. And pull you in from the Bahamas over to here, that would your dad must have been a bit sad losing you.
Yeah, I know. I
Yeah.
would have liked to kind of practice with him for another 5 or 10 years before he ended up retiring and learn
Yeah.
more. But no,
Yeah.
it all worked out perfectly. So I'm really
Yeah.
lucky to be here. Thank you, New Zealand.
Yeah, it's beautiful here too. So today we're going to dive all over the place because you have so many areas of expertise. You're very big into hormones, women's health, men's health with hormones, peptides, cancer, autoimmune diseases, stresses issues, cardiovascular issues. We can talk about circadian biology. In fact, I think that's probably a good place to start. Circadian biology and quantum healing. Those are two couple of things that I know that I haven't got a heck of a lot of depth in. I mean, I know circadian rhythms quite well, but the quantum side definitely not. So, do you want to start there with a little bit about circadian rhythms and why are they important to us as humans?
I think we need to back up because as, holistic practitioners, we're always looking for the foundational root cause of, what's making people ill or what the root cause of health is. And, we go to things like nutrition and, supplementation and hormone therapy, things like that. And while they're really important, they're not really the foundation. The body is an electrical system, and unless we optimize our environment to allow our hormone pathways to work better, our metabolism to work properly, then we're really missing the boat. And so, coming from first, I guess, the circadian biology point of view, I worked a lot with breast cancer in the Bahamas, and there's a huge, huge uh, link between light at night with insufficient sun exposure and breast cancer, just because how things like light affect hormone production. If we don't have melatonin at night because we were looking at screens, that'll allow our estrogen to be too high. Without melatonin at night, we don't have good cancer cell surveillance. So when we're thinking about treating the root cause, we got to step back and we got to look at the basically the biophysics that run the system. We think of ourselves as, biochemical and, hormone pathways and metabolism. But at the foundation, it's all about our ability to maintain cell membrane potential, the amount of electrons in the system, the balance between oxidative stress and antioxidants, so redox system, and the charge in the body. And if we don't address the charge, then we can give people the best supplements, the most optimal diets, the best hormones, and they're not going to get better.
Wow.
So over 10 years, especially probably about 10 years ago, dealing especially with patients who kind of came in, who've seen everybody, who've had the best tests, the best supplements, they're eating the best diets, but they're not getting well. It's really led me to step back and look at the environmental picture and have to go back and learn the biophysics. And because biology is built on physics, the understanding of basically how energy flows in the body is absolutely foundational to how the biochemistry will manifest, how gene expression will manifest. And so that's really been my focus in the last decade,
Wow.
is looking at that.
So, if we double tap on that and click in a bit closer to that information, like already in that 5 minutes, I think people have sort of got the idea. Like this is very deep. Like we evolved as humans, as cave people back in the day, to be out in the sunshine during the day. We slept at night. We had only red light at night from fires. We had no blue light. We had a lot of blue light exposure in the morning to the sun, et cetera, et cetera. And now we live in a world where we're inside a lot of the time. We're on screens with junk light, not the right spectrum of light. And people might think, well, that's so unimportant. But anything we've evolved a certain way and then we change it in our modern lifestyle. And, we want to live in houses and we want to have the niceties of the wonderful things that we have, but that has a price to pay for us. So going into the whole circadian rhythm, so you're talking about melatonin and cortisol and all of these things that have got a certain daily rhythm. Can you walk us through that 24-hour rhythm of the what happens to us in that cycle of a 24-hour period?
Yeah, but first I want to go back to what you said because it's so important. So we've evolved from our, single cell ancestors for 3.5 billion years with basically two constants on this planet. One was gravity, there was always gravity, and there were
Mhm.
always 24-hour light and dark cycles. So for us to be the complex organisms we are today, we've had to basically adapt everything in our biology to in response to those 24-hour light and dark cycles and obviously gravity. Now, if we think of what happens when we go into space,
Yeah,
we can kind of get a
we
sense of how
fall
important
apart.
this is. Yeah, have you seen the images of Suni, I think Suni Williams when she's come back? She was
No, I haven't seen those, but yeah,
yeah, no, so there's massive aging, mitochondrial
yeah,
stress. All, the astronauts are some of the fittest people that they send away, and they come back just completely metabolically broken with incredible amounts of mitochondrial dysfunction.
yeah,
So if we think of how profoundly removing gravity, the one part of the factors we evolved with has on our biology, and then we think we can just, completely alter our light and dark cycles. It kind of just makes us step back and just realize how important it is. So, even if we look at things like the rise of all chronic disease, at the turn of the century, when Edison's light bulb kind of became commercial and people started having light at night, working in factories, that's actually the first time we see a spike in everything from cancer, metabolic disease, autoimmunity. And this was before, a lot of people associate this with the rise in or the availability of processed food. So we
Mhm.
already had all these things rise before we had the food, which was kind of the second hit to the system. So when we talk about kind of terrestrial sunlight, the light coming down or the energy coming down from the sun, we have to realize that this energy from the sun powers everything on Earth. So
Mhm.
there's three main components. First, we have the UV, the UVA and UVB. And obviously, this is the highest energy, shortest wavelength type of energy coming from the sun. And that's also why it can be hard on our biology. It can be sort of dangerous. That's why we can get a sunburn if we have too much of this high energy coming our skin and we're not prepared for it. So we have the UV, and obviously there's many benefits to that. Everybody knows about UVB and vitamin D production, but we don't realize just how important UVA is as well in terms
Mhm.
of lowering our blood pressure and helping with energy production. Then we have our visible light spectrum, and that's the main part of the spectrum that helps with the circadian biology. It was water.
This is brilliant.
Very excited.
Yeah.
So we have obviously in the visible spectrum, we have from the blue all the way to the red. And as you mentioned, the blue light is the strongest Zeitgeber or the strongest message
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
circadian biology.
Yep.
Then we have, the visible spectrum that allows us to see. And then we also have, after that, we have the infrared spectrum. And the
Hmm.
infrared spectrum is probably the most important nutrient for our mitochondrial health. And we
Wow.
can talk more about that.
Hmm.
But if we go back to the circadian cycle, what happens is first thing in the morning before dawn, as the sun's rising, the first, at first because the infrared is very long wavelength, low
Yep.
energy, it's able to penetrate the atmosphere. So because the sun is lower down, further distance, the first thing we have in the morning is infrared. So that's
Hmm.
sometimes why in the morning you'll see the sunrise or the sunset later in the day as looking kind of pink.
Yep.
That infrared in the morning, as we kind of go out there, that's starting to upregulate our body's energy systems. It's really interesting. We used to think, or there's a thought in the biophysics world that, lizards and snakes, I guess we don't really have that many in New Zealand, but they like to go and lay in the sun in the morning. And
Mm-hmm. Yep.
it was thought that, they're cold-blooded, they're using the heat. But actually, it's the infrared in the morning that
Wow.
turns on their mitochondrial function that kind of gets their energy systems going.
Wow.
So
Look
first
at
thing in the morning,
that.
we get some infrared. That's kind of getting our energy system going. Then we get the sunrise and the visible light starts coming in. And that's the trigger to really start the metabolism going. So the TCA cycle, kind of get that cycling the right way, waking everything up, getting our mitochondria going. The first light we see in the morning is also the most important for kind of setting that circadian rhythm. So going from dark to light, that's turning on everything, especially things like hormone production.
Hmm.
So have you ever got your thyroid or testosterone level
Yep.
measured? They
Yeah.
tell you
Yeah.
go 7 a.m.
When it's up.
Exactly. And part of that, there are obviously genes, circadian genes, but part of that is also the morning light kind of
Yep.
turns on those morning hormones.
Yep.
Then the sun starts to rise. The morning light on our skin and in our eyes also turns on a really cool internal peptide system or a gene called POMC. It's pro-opioid So this is a
Mm.
gene on exposure to light. It's transcribed, it's broken down into peptides. One of the peptides is alpha MSH, and
Hmm.
that tells our body to start getting ready to make melanin to protect
Yep.
us from the UV that's coming later.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So that peptide is, yeah, people inject that peptide and they get
Right.
nice tanned skin. So when we tan like that, that is the alpha MSH coming out, and so that protects us from the midday sun.
It tells our body, okay, the sun's coming. We're going to start
Wow.
working on our ability to make melanin. And that's one of
Mm,
the reasons sunglasses are so problematic. Because
hmm.
sunglasses in the morning, you're blocking the warning signal the sun is coming.
Right.
Sunglasses in the sun, you're creating a mismatch between the energy coming on the skin and the signal through that pro-opiomelanocortin system.
Wow.
So,
My mind is blown. No, right there.
okay, it gets better. It's so cool. I love the story. So, So versus the morning, and also, oh, we can go so deep into this, but um, I don't know if you've come across, people are also using things like melanotan for neurodegeneration, for
Yep.
mold illness. Alpha MSH plays a role in immune regulation, appetite suppression, and other functions, and appetite suppression, body composition, then many things like that. So then, where do we at?
Wow.
So then we have the morning. So then, after as the sun keeps rising, we got the visible light, circadian mechanism turning on, sun's going a bit higher. Now we have UVA rise. So this is the time of the morning, usually about 60 to 90 minutes after sunrise. And actually, a good little tip. There's a really cool app. It's called My Circadian Life,
Mm-hmm.
or Circadian app. There's two of them, and you can
Mm-hmm.
actually put in your GPS location, and it'll tell you when dawn is, when UVA rises, and when UVB is available for you to make vitamin D, and
Wow.
sunset times. It's really helpful.
Yeah.
So when UVA comes out, UVA, I always talk about this as nature's antidepressant. That
Mm-hmm.
first early UVA in the morning really helps to turn on our dopamine and our neurotransmitter systems. So that, anyone who's suffering with low mood, sunrise, super important, but get out at least an hour after the sun rises, and that'll be great for cognition and for mood.
My gosh, this is
And
just
that's
absolute.
the story. I mean, it's 3.5 billion years we've been seeing these
Yeah.
sunsets. So important.
Yeah.
So
So carry on. So what happens when you get to midday and the afternoon sun and things like that?
forgot something super important. The morning is also when we make melatonin. So
Mm-hmm.
we like to think of melatonin as a sleep hormone, but it's actually made in the morning, our pineal melatonin that helps us,
Mm-hmm.
our day-night cycles. It's made actually in the morning and it's released when the light goes away. So a lot of people dealing with sleep issues as well, they think, okay, no light at night, but equally important is light in the morning because you get your
Mm-hmm.
neurotransmitters, your melatonin. So then, where are we at now? Kind of early morning. Sun's getting towards midday. Obviously, this is the strongest. This when the sun's highest in the sky, the distance from the sun to the earth is the angle is the shortest, so that all of the wavelengths can get through. We get a ton, or we can get UVA and UVB, and a lot of the UVB obviously is so important for vitamin D production, but we don't realize that vitamin D and cholesterol they're made from the same precursor.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people dealing with things like high cholesterol, it's often because they're not getting enough sunlight and they're not making enough vitamin D. We also need to realize that when we're making real vitamin D versus taking it, we're making 30 to hundreds, the research is still out on this, different metabolites do different things. So it's not just, oh, vitamin D, good for the immune system. It's, hundreds of different metabolites potentially that are influencing our immune system, our hormone pathways, and every aspect of our health. So we got
Wow. Wow.
that out.
So
And
we can't just replace it with, vitamin D3, activated vitamin D3 in a pill form, and it's not one to one with when we get sunshine.
no, I mean, it's worst case scenario if someone's really deficient, it is helpful. But
Mm-hmm.
even if we look at the research on vitamin D, when I first came through, my training about probably 12 years ago, it was like, holy crap, vitamin D is like the most amazing thing. All this
Mm,
research,
mm,
it helps
mm.
diabetes, autoimmune cancer, everything.
Yeah.
But then what we're seeing clinically is, yeah, it's helpful, but it's not as amazing as all these studies were suggesting. And when we go back and kind of look at the research, what we realize is it's not so much that vitamin D is absolutely important for gene expression and, like I mentioned, immune system, but it's a proxy for sun exposure. So those with higher vitamin D levels have gotten more sun. And it's the influence of the sun exposure and probably more time outside, better circadian rhythm that actually confers all those benefits, not just the isolated vitamin D.
Wow. Okay. And then there's a genetic piece. Like if you've come, like I, did genetics in my practice, and I've got very poor vitamin D genetics, right? Because I come from Maori descent. Like my ancestors were outside all day, pretty much naked, right? And a lot of sun exposure. So evolutionary speaking, we probably down-regulated a lot of our vitamin D genes because we didn't need, because we were outside all day anyway. Now I'm not, and I'm covered up, and I'm inside, and I'm, a modern day human. Um, so it's a double whammy for people with very poor genetics in that regard.
Absolutely. I mean, there are some kind of nutrigenomic tweaks there, but the darker your skin is, the more sun you need. But
Yeah,
just
right.
that's what it means. Um, Being outside too. So anytime we're outside, 50% of the sun is in that infrared, or the solar spectrum is in that infrared range. And I mentioned before that that infrared is our super nutrient. Forget CoQ10, forget NAD, forget methylene blue. This is like the super nutrient for our mitochondria. And all the red light research has been showing this.
Hmm.
So anytime we're outside, we're getting full spectrum infrared light. And this is much more evolutionarily beneficial because we've adapted to the whole spectrum
Hmm.
versus, I'm not against red light panels, but a lot of the red light therapy, they'll just have, LEDs that emit a narrow band infrared,
Hmm.
like an
Yep.
850 and a 650. Or
Hmm.
outside, we're getting, from 600 to, 3000 nanometer infrared light. So it's the difference between, again, like taking vitamin D versus being in the sun. The red
Has
light
its
panel.
place, but not as good as the real deal.
Exactly. So just by being outside any time of the day, you're getting that infrared, which is going to upregulate your or improve your mitochondrial function, and that's your metabolism, your immune surveillance, your hormone panels, everything. So, so
So
important.
I'm hearing people in the audience going, but I'm going to get sunburned. But even if I
Oh,
get that signal that you mentioned before, I'm still going to get burned and I'm going to get wrinkly and I'm going to age quicker and photo aging and. So I mean, I look at your skin and I'm like, holy crap, you look as healthy as a person could be. So what's the argument there? Like what
yeah.
like we're told to put on sunscreen, cover every inch of your body with terrible sunscreens that are full of chemicals, by the way, or even zinc ones that it can block certain things in your uptake in your body. So yeah, give us your take on that argument.
So Lisa, you're an athlete, right?
Hmm.
Would you, or if you're a trainer, or do you train people as well? Like, are you?
I used to,
Yeah.
and now I don't.
Okay.
I'm longevity now, so yeah, but used
So
to.
what would happen if you took someone who's, 300 pounds and you put them through like a hardcore CrossFit? Uh,
Yeah, it totally annihilate them. Not good.
yeah,
Not good. No.
exactly. So blaming the sun in this context for things like sunburn is like blaming the gym for, working out without having kind of trained before.
Correct. Yeah.
So when we
Wow.
think about the sun, I like to think about, training your skin. So the first things first, you know, we need sun exposure all year. What a lot of people do is in the winter, because of their jobs, most of the time they're inside. Then they go on vacation to Fiji and they spend all this time outside.
Bash the crap out of their skin. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's like going to CrossFit when you're 300 pounds and you've never done
Right.
that before.
I love it.
So what we need a warm up, and that warm up is kind of like that morning light. So it's that gentle, all the way up to just the first part of the UVA. That's
Hmm.
priming the skin. That's turning on the skin's kind of ability to make melanin. So no sunglasses, early morning light, number one. Then working up to midday sun exposure. So all year, I mean, ideally not starting in the middle of summer, but starting with really small doses. So we have something built in, we have an early warning system built in our skin. It's called getting pink when we've had too much
Yeah.
sun. The problem with sunscreen is when we use sunscreen, we're preferentially blocking UVB and we're letting too much UVA in. The
Mhm.
UVB is really what makes us that pink when we've had too much sun. So what
Mhm.
happens with sunscreen when we go outside, we spend too long in the sun and we're kind of ruining that early warning system. We're kind of shutting that down. So what I usually recommend for people just starting out, 5, 10 minutes, just really gentle midday sun exposure, always after morning light. The second part of that is we need a cool down and we need to recover. And just like if you're working out, you're training, you need to sleep and you need to, recover properly. You need darkness at night. So that
Mhm.
melatonin that's released at night, the skin has its own circadian system. If you have light at night, if you have too much blue light in the wrong times, your skin isn't going to go through the nighttime repair and regeneration mode. So the worst thing people could do, very worst thing, go on vacation after having an indoor job, get sunburnt, and then stay up late drinking and have a late dinner. Because without the proper circadian mechanism, you don't get the skin repair that should happen, that we've evolved to have after every day of, having a little bit of damage from the sun or excessive energy from the sun come in. And then nutrition is super important as well. So a sunburn is essentially inflammation in the skin, oxidative
Hmm.
stress, inflammation. So when people, if people are, I mean, you'll probably, if people are listening, they know people like this who are really sun sensitive.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there's Fitzpatrick skin types and mitochondrial haplogroups. But if we're eating a diet that's really rich in inflammatory foods like seed oils, sugars, things like that, we're just going to have a higher baseline inflammation. So we're not going to make melanin as well. We're going to get more inflamed and we're going to get more red and more skin damage. So that's a big one. So just like, train our body to become an athlete to get our skin to be more athletic. Does that sound cheesy?
Yep. Yeah. No, no, not at
We
all.
need
That
to,
makes sense.
warm up, go slow, kind of
Yeah.
just to that edge. And there's something called the minimal erythemal dose. If you look at the research, this is the amount of UV light that even in research where they're trying to prove skin cancer, it is safe. And this is just to the point where the skin gets a little bit pink, but the next day it's back to normal.
Yep.
Usually that dose of sun, even strong sun for most people, is absolutely, it's not going to cause any damage.
Like an oxidative stress, like when you hop in a hyperbaric or a sauna or something, it is an oxidative stress, but it's signaling to the mitochondria and to your genes to turn things on and off, and your mitochondria to do its thing and repair, and so you get stronger, you get more muscle fibers. If you've been training, you adapt. And so it's about the dose, the right time, the building up to it, and not overwhelming your body. Just like you wouldn't, like I have sometimes clients who come in and they're doing the cold plunges and they're doing the infrared saunas and they're doing the hyperbarics and then they're going and doing a marathon on top. And they're doing all of the things and they're
Oh,
doing all the things a little bit too much, right? There's a sweet spot for everything. And we can only cope with so much in a 24-hour period. And and as an ultra marathon runner who completely ignored all of the signs of what a body should do and shouldn't do in a 24-hour period, you push over that limit and you're going to do damage to yourself. And even if it's a positive thing like exercise or it's the same sort of principle, really, isn't it? Be
absolutely.
sensible, common sense
Yeah,
sort of
and
principle.
paying attention to that recovery. If
Yeah,
you're an athlete, you didn't sleep properly, then you wouldn't expect to be at your peak performance the next day.
yeah,
If you
yeah.
don't have that proper darkness at night to allow the skin to kind of do its healing phase
Mhm.
overnight with the proper melatonin, then we are going to get accumulated skin damage. And then even with nutrition, and I love the story of why we need to eat a seasonal and local diet. When we're eating so like as an athlete, nutrition plays such a big role in our skin's ability to tolerate and benefit from sunlight. So if I mean, probably not as much as New Zealand, but if when we get in more temperate climates, what you'll notice is, and in New Zealand as well, the fruits, the colorful fruits and veggies, all the berries and things, they come out when the sun is strong. All of those
Mhm.
pigments, those polyphenols in the plants, are actually the plant creating like little sunscreen molecules.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
when we eat the colorful fruit and veggies, which are available usually when it's, sunnier time of year in spring and summer, then those are actually going to protect our skin from the sun.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
also, really, really important is just a omega-3 rich diet. So having natural kaiwana, seafood, uh,
Yep.
and that DHA, because that DHA, it's well, we could go deep on this too, but
Mhm.
DHA not only will help protect us from sunburn as well as EPA, but DHA does something very cool. DHA in our cell membranes, there's something called the photoelectric effect, and this is
Mhm.
something that Einstein discovered. And DHA in our cell membranes helps us to take the energy from the sun, the photons, and make energy in our body. So the more healthy DHA we have in our cells, the better we're able to use the energy from the sun versus kind of allow it to cause damage locally in the body.
Wow. So your fish oils and you're eating your fish and
Absolutely. Look,
yeah.
better than fish oils. Eat the real fish. We have such
Eat the
good
real fish.
there's
Yeah.
mussels. Oh, it's so cheap and they're so
Yeah.
good.
and plasmalogens and muscles and things like
Definitely.
that. Yeah.
Super
Oh
important.
wow. Oh wow. Yeah. No. Yeah. You just blown my mind on a whole lot of things. I'm just like, and just going back briefly to the gravity thing, I interviewed Dr. David Furman, who works with a lot of astronauts, and they study gravity, and they actually have little because gravity is just so essential to how we age, and like the astronauts actually age like 36 years for every year. I think it was 36 for every year in space. That's how much they're aging, and a lot of that can be reversed when they come back. But things like cardiac remodeling, that takes quite a long time, can take a decade. And so these astronauts, they're working really hard to try to help them, live better health and longer lives. And what can they do? So they're studying. They have little miniature organs, like little tiny brains and little tiny, like, I don't know how they do that, but anyway, they do. And then they suspend them in these zero gravity machines, and then they can watch them age within a 24-hour period. It's that fast. So we really are evolutionary creatures. Like we are a part of Mother Earth and the sun, and like it's not just woo-woo stuff. This is real deep science, and that the circadian rhythm stuff. When we look at our people who are working night shifts, we know they get diabetes. We know they have a higher rate of cancer. We know they are overweight often. We know that they're not well people, and we need them in our society. We need our doctors and nurses, our firefighters, our police, that are working in the night. How can people that don't have an optimal circadian rhythm pattern just because of the job they do, what can they do to protect themselves or help? Is this where things like red light therapy or what can they do to sort of support their systems, because we need them in society? What can we do there?
I mean, I think kind of relating back to the astronauts, one of the other factors in the International Space Station was I think it was in the so in the early 2000s, they switched the lighting to be more energy efficient, which are the LEDs.
Mhm.
And even though they have circadian lighting in the space station, so it changes color spectrum, they're missing the infrared light. So our older light bulbs, our incandescent bulbs, our firelight, our candles, they all contain this infrared light, which is present from the sun. And so I think from a government level, a higher level, one of the best things we can do is create workplaces that have full lighting that contains infrared. Again,
That is so good. That is
that
so good.
infrared is our mitochondrial fuel. It basically increases our energy production. It helps maintain our exclusions on water around the cells, which provide another layer of energy. So simply by even if people are working night shifts, because they're getting no sun, they're getting not no infrared. So at the very least, having, lighting in hospitals and,
Oh,
the people are exposed to that have that infrared component, which is such BS because it's been removed and, those light bulbs are being phased out in the US because
yeah,
they're not energy efficient, but they're
yeah.
also not energy efficient for us.
No, they're
They're
killing us.
energy.
Like these LED lights that we all have now in our houses and stuff are all just the worst possible part of the spectrum that we could, and then we're on screens, we're on computers, and we can, download certain softwares and things that can help a tiny bit, and things like that. But one of the worst, like when I'm unfortunately, I've spent a lot of time in hospitals with my parents, and it's like there. I don't know how anybody gets healthy in a hospital environment. Like
Oh,
no sunshine. Like they did a study on COVID back in the COVID days where they took COVID patients outside and got them 15 minutes worth of sun exposure, and they recovered a hell of a lot better and faster than the ones who didn't, right? Something as simple as that. We're not, we're not set up for that. We don't do that. We don't take our patients out. I mean, when I've been in hospital with mum, unless she was really, in ICU and I didn't have a choice or whatever, I would take her out if I could possibly get her in a wheelchair, and I'd get her outside and I'd expose as much of her skin as I possibly could for 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever she could manage before I could, take her back in. I never let her eat any of the hospital food, not a single bite. Like you cannot get well on that crap, like there's no way our patients are going to be getting well on it. It's all about the money, saving of the money. And
Right.
then everything is a blue light and a beeping noise. You've got all these machines that beep. I ended up with, like I'm like post-traumatic stress from beeping, like because they're all like emergency signal beeping,
Mm,
which we need obviously when someone's, but they're just going all time, all day, all through when they're not necessarily, telling you somebody that their heart has stopped or something, or that their blood pressure's dropped or whatever. They're just beeping, beeping, beeping all day. And then they're flashing these lights, and then they've got these overhead lights. It's like, how does anybody survive that environment?
I know, or yeah.
Like,
Like I think you've done the right thing. I think anyone in the hospital, obviously life-saving
yeah, we
care,
need all the
we need
stuff.
it, but get out as soon as possible, like because it really is an unhealthy place, like you said.
And unhealthy for the doctors and the nurses and the
Absolutely.
people working there as well. When we could do things like at least change the lighting, at least, make have places where like there's no air in the hospital. Everything is hermetically sealed and you cannot get fresh air. You cannot get sunshine, to even open the window and breathe the fresh air, like, just basic things, and it's all for your safety. Anyway, whenever I hear those words, "it's for your safety," I'm like, okay, double
Oh.
click on
And I
that.
mean, there are even, quite a few studies showing that, patients in hospital rooms that have more light, that have bigger windows, they do better versus ones that have views of nature do better.
Yeah,
It's such little things, and if we really were concerned with health, it seems kind of strange we're not doing.
we're not. No, we're not. We're concerned with pharmaceutical companies and stuff. But this has been a really fan. Like I think Vanessa, like obviously, I want to do a whole series with you because like this was just like we're just touching the top of the iceberg of your deep knowledge. Like you really have a deep knowledge, and we haven't even got to the end of the day on the circadian, let alone the
I know
keys to
we
the
haven't got
hormones.
to evening yet.
We haven't even got to evening. So let's do that. Let's do the circadian, and then we'll have more sessions
All
on
right.
other things. Right? You're going to be busy. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about like what happens then as the day progresses, and how do we wind up that 24 hour?
Yeah. So we've had our dose of, strong UV light, during midday. That starts to go away. The visible light remains. Obviously, in the afternoon, there's no UV, but we can still see perfectly well. Then the sun starts to drop even lower. Then we have sunset. Again, this is a time where there's rich in there's actually a bit of blue light. So there's actually been some newer research, and this is something I've had to kind of retell my story, or kind of think the way I've
Hmm.
explained this. But as the sun drops, there is actually right at the end of twilight, there is an amount of blue light.
Hmm.
That infrared, as the light is very low intensity, but with the blue, and that's sometimes, if you've looked at a sunset, it's sometimes really yellow, but it's quite blue at the top.
Hmm.
And that's the signal that now darkness is coming.
Hmm.
And so right at the end of the day, we've been outside, we've kind of seen the whole changing light cycle, which is just information telling our body what to do and when. Then as the light goes away, then we get our melatonin release. So, well, hold on, it's one more thing. So during the day, on exposure to near infrared light, we actually make another type of melatonin. There's two types of melatonin in the body. One is the pineal. That's the
Hmm.
type that supports or guides our chronobiology or circadian biology. But our mitochondria also make melatonin. We have something called
Hmm.
intracellular melatonin. We
Hmm.
make that all day long whenever there's infrared light around. It's the most potent antioxidant that we know of. And
Wow.
that's because anytime we're outside, it's kind of stressful. It's hot and it can be sunny. And so we're making intracellular melatonin because our metabolism is higher to quench that oxidative stress. So we have that melatonin pool all day long. Right at the end of the day, we get that big release into the bloodstream of the pineal melatonin. And that's the signal to move not into sleep, but into that regeneration repair mode. So it drops our body temperature, lowers our heart rate, upregulates our immune system, especially against viruses and early cancer cells. And so as we're sleeping, our body's going into that kind of repair mode. This is also why it's really important not to have dinner too close to bed. When melatonin is the highest, our insulin control is the worst. So if you
Right.
have the same meal at 8 o'clock in the evening versus the morning, you're going to have a completely different blood sugar response.
Wow.
So super.
Wow.
So then when we're in that repair kind of melatonin release nighttime mode, if we get blue light from screens or then we watch Netflix at 8, 9 o'clock, this not only will disrupt our circadian biology, but it'll spike our cortisol. And when we spike our cortisol, as you know, drops our
We're awake.
testosterone, messes up our hormone axis.
We put on weight.
Exactly. So everyone thinks about adrenal fatigue and,
Mm.
issues all about like, stress. But the biggest stress to our biology, or one of the biggest, is light at night. So if you want to lose weight, if you want a healthy immune system, if you want to have good hormones, a good libido, you, light at night is your worst enemy. So,
Yeah, and unless it's the red spectrum light, like a fire, a candle, that's okay because that's what we evolved with,
We got to watch intensity though, and I'll tell you
right?
my story. So I was right into the red lights. We built our house 5 years ago. Got all the
Yeah,
red, beautiful red lights everywhere. Like it
yeah.
looks like a glowing brothel if you look at our like shining red. But it was actually it's the the color temperature, the wavelength of light is less important, but the intensity also matters.
Right,
So if you're using a bright, one of those big red panels at 9 o'clock, or like us, you had, the shining, all the red lights, that will still, to some degree, interfere with that, optimal circadian biology.
makes sense. Makes sense.
So,
Yep. Hmm.
so red lights much better than obviously white or LEDs, but you do want to keep the intensity low as well. So we moved to candles now, and I can't even stay up past 8:30. It's just like
Wow,
so.
isn't that amazing? Just be careful. My husband's a firefighter and he won't let me have candles. Get on, you're gonna burn the house down. So do be careful there.
Oh, especially with kids. Like tell everyone candles, and I'm like, oh, you have a 3-year-old. Oh, maybe not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just caution on that one because yeah, he's been to too many house fires caused by candles, so I'm not allowed them. But yeah, that's the point. So dim the lights, don't have them too much. Don't do your red light panel if you've got one, because I do red light therapy, too late in the day. More if you can earlier on in the day if you're going to do that, right?
And the
Uh,
red light panels are great, just like in sports, use them for sore muscles. If you
yep.
ever get sunburn or if you can't get morning light and you're, say, a fair skin or redhead, prime your skin for 10 minutes before you go
Hmm.
to the beach with the red light. When you
Wow.
get back from the beach, do another 10 to 20 minutes, and that'll help to just repair the skin and prevent
That's
sunburn.
great advice. That's great advice. And a lot of like with someone like my mum, we can't leave her outside for too long. She has no temperature regulations in her brain, like it's damaged the temperature regulation from the aneurysm and stroke. So I've got to be very careful with heat because if the heat goes too much, she'll just switch off. Her brain will just go down. So I do use the red light therapy for her in the morning when I can to get a little bit of exposure. Sometimes only 5 minutes already a part of the body. And then I try to get as much outside time,
Yeah.
but keeping a very close eye on the sun. Like she will go down really quickly. So there's nuance to this conversation
But
is the thing. Yep.
but sitting her or anyone who's sensitive or just anyone, the more you can be outside in the shade.
Yeah.
So we absorb our body's mitochondria. We love infrared light. Anytime we're outside, even if I just open this window a little bit, light is nonlinear. Infrared is coming in. So
Yeah,
you don't
right.
have to be indirect sun to get the benefits of infrared light.
Mm.
And unlike us, plants, they don't like infrared light. They reflect it. So if we're sitting on the grass or on a tree, we're basically getting the infrared
Okay.
light from the
Infrared.
environment and
Beautiful.
everything just like soaking us. So it's a cool coevolution between just like the oxygen carbon dioxide story. It's the light story with plants is quite cool too.
Isn't that amazing? So that's why, like, when I go in the forest, I feel better.
Yeah,
I
you don't need the direct
feel,
sun.
I love to forest bathe, or just even, like yesterday, I took my mum down to the river and we just sat with the ducks and watched the ducks with trees around us, and it was just like, oh, my body just relaxed, for that few minutes, and just trying to get little bits of that in your day instead of just being stuck inside in your office, which is really, really hard in our modern day world. But as bosses, that people that run offices or that run, companies, have a think about this. How can you help your employees get that exposure every day? Is there a way to make a courtyard outside? Is there a way for you to incorporate the right lighting for those people? Get the, just thinking these things through. would be really important, I think, for society as a whole, because this is absolutely crucial. So we've covered, Vanessa, we've covered the circadian rhythm only. Was there any part we didn't get to? Like what happens in the early hours of the morning? Like the hormone regulation. Tell us a little bit about, well, when do the hormones, like when do male hormones like testosterone and things come out?
Yeah, so generally, so we have our melatonin spike kind of early evening, that begins to decline, and then cortisol, because we do have circadian genes, so even in the absence of light, we have about a 24-hour, a little bit longer than that kind of cycling of functions in the body. So in the early mornings, and this when people's circadian rhythm is off, they'll have this happen too soon. Our cortisol will begin to rise. So
Hmm.
actually, the light anchors the cortisol in the morning because blue light is important. Blue light influences cortisol.
Yeah,
Cortisol will begin to rise kind of early morning, and then you get up, you get light outside, and that's cortisol's not bad. We want it high in the morning, we want it low
yeah,
at
we
night.
do in the morning. Yeah.
And so that happens by itself. So that starts to go up. Then we have our thyroid hormone again, our testosterone, and then we kind of go through the whole cycle again. Neurotransmitters next, and kind of back through the melatonin, the other side.
So if you've got people who are like teenagers, like with depression and all sorts of mental health disorders and things like that, do you think a lot of it could be helped with the right circadian rhythms and the right eating times of the day and the right food?
I think light is the biggest driver of a lot of the mental health and also some of the hormonal issues in children, especially. And we also know that so blue light, especially 650 or sorry, 450 to or 420 to 450 nanometer wavelength,
Hmm.
that's predominant from our screens, it influences dopamine. So the more we're looking at blue lit screens, more we're kind of using up our dopamine. That's why they're so addictive. It's not just the Facebook algorithm, it's the actual
Oh.
light coming off the screen that makes it, when you see the baby and they can't like look away from the left iPad.
Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm.
So, a lot of these kids, they have such exposure, they have no natural light, they're missing their intercellular and their pineal melatonin. And then they're just getting bombarded with this steady state all day long, blue light. And that's zapping their dopamine, which is affecting their impulse regulation, their mood, their ability to focus. Then they go to schools, and the schools are all shifting to LEDs, which are, that blue rich spectrum, but also full of flicker. So they have,
Yeah.
blue lights are flickering, it's just stimulating their brains. We have this epidemic of ADHD and, learning disorders, and we blame it on maybe the food or genetics, but it's quite clearly, hugely related to the environment the kids are in.
Wow.
And then,
This is,
the hormone story too. So we know that girls that have more blue light or more light exposure in the evenings live in cities, they have earlier puberty because without melatonin rising, estrogen goes up.
mhm.
And then if cortisol is high in the night, testosterone goes down. So we have this generation of kids, girls and boys, with very skewed hormonal profiles. And
Yeah, and I see it daily. Like people in my practice, like so much hormonal dysregulation. It's off the charts, and estrogen dominance seems to be a very common theme. And part of it's genetic, but a lot of it's maybe the circadian rhythms, maybe the food exposure, the stress exposures as well. And not enough testosterone. Our men are just, like the levels of testosterone across our men in general is dropped worldwide. Like when you look at the lab values of what was considered normal testosterone 20 years ago to what the lab values are now considered normal, because they take the last, I don't know, 2,000 people coming through or whatever they use
yeah,
as their sample, and rather than what's actually healthy, now it's considered normal testosterone. Whereas if you'd gone to a doctor 20 years ago, you would have gone, oh my God, you've got no testosterone, you need, testosterone support or whatever. They're just dropping, and of course then the fertility rates are dropping and blah blah blah. Just
I mean,
horrific.
it's horrific, but if you want to prove this to yourself, I get my male patients to do this. It's easier for men because they have this built-in response.
Yeah.
So obviously, so it's not exactly perfect, but a good gauge of your general testosterone levels is how often you get spontaneous morning erections. And obviously,
Yeah.
used to have those more, probably younger, less now. If I always challenge them at block, get the circadian timing right and just write down your notebook or have your wife kind of check every morning and see how often that happens. And
Right.
often within 2 weeks, of getting the light right, they'll actually notice, oh, this is happening more. So it's a really good kind of proxy for testosterone that's very exciting
Obvious.
to
Yeah,
see.
yeah. Well,
Uh,
and important,
Yeah. And
crucially important.
the other thing I have people do is wear a continuous glucose monitor. We didn't kind of get into this, but light at night through cortisol, but also through insulin, will stimulate blood sugar response. So not even eating a snack. If you're looking at Facebook at 9 p.m., your blood sugar's up. If you go outside or use red light, you'll see your blood sugar comes down. And that's because our mitochondria, they're not able to use the fuel. With the blue light, they're under stress. And then with the red light, they can use that fuel for energy production. So that's another cool test. People will see that within a few days. Just a,
Wow.
right?
This is absolutely fascinating, Vanessa.
Stuff.
We have to wrap up there for today, but oh, your depth of knowledge is obviously just off the charts, and we have so many other. I want to have a number of sessions with you if you've got time,
Absolutely.
because we didn't even touch the surface. But that was a super important one, I think, to
Absolutely.
start with, because we know like people like Jack Cruz, that have been very big in this space. Lovely, amazing person to follow. Other people. Is there anyone else that you would mention as being a good person to follow if you want to go deeper dive into this sort of space?
Well, I came across Jack Cruz in 2014. And being from
Hmm.
the Bahamas, I was always a sun worshiper. I was teased as a kid being, you know,
Yep.
different population, one of the only white kids, being teased as being albino. So I would go and get as much as possible. And then, people would tell me, oh, it's so unhealthy. So when I found Jack Cruz in around 2014, I was like, oh my God, yes.
Yes. I wasn't wrong.
No, so I'm hugely influenced by his thinking, and
Yeah.
we can go. There's so much more about light, about our internal light, our biophotons, and I think that's a really, really or ultra weak photonic emissions. We actually emit UV light from our cells, which would be cool to talk about.
Wow.
But Jack Cruz definitely is probably one of the, if you want to go deep into this and really understand the quantum biology and kind of understand also how there might have been some nefarious
Yep.
reasons behind why we've chosen this spectrum of light over this one, why we're using energy efficient LED bulbs.
Yep.
It's a really interesting one.
Yep.
For kind of a lighter kind of take on the topic, um, Carrie Bennett is quite good. She's an American um, teacher and has a podcast. Sarah Pugh is from the UK, and she also has kind of a quantum health podcast. She's also very easy to follow and understand. So
Yeah, great. Yeah. Those are really good resources. Now, Dr. Vanessa, you also work with people, and you're here in New Zealand, which is amazing because usually the people I'm interviewing are in America. So, tell us, how can people reach out to you, work with you, because you're obviously at the forefront, and you work across that whole spectrum of disorders that we mentioned at the beginning, from cancers to hormones, and we need to do a deep dive into the cancer story because both of us are deep into that, and the hormone story, to go a bit further. But where can people reach out to you and work with you if they wanted to?
yeah, probably the easiest is just my website. It's www.drvanessa, Life. Couldn't afford the .com, sorry.
Dot life is far more appropriate.
And my Facebook page is Dr. Vanessa Ingraham, and my LinkedIn as well. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Vanessa, thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, your expertise, your passion for going deep into the science and bringing it and relating it down to a level where everybody can understand how powerful this is. I thought I knew a lot about circadian rhythms. I now realize I don't know anything. I've got to go and do more deep diving. So thank you so much for your wisdom today. It's been absolutely amazing.
No problem. I guess also just what I want to say is if you don't listen to anything else, just realize that there's tons of science to support this, but at the end of the day, health comes down to how much you can just go the fuck outside or go outside.
Yeah, and how you feel doing it. I mean,
Exactly.
pay attention, like yesterday sitting with the ducks on the grass by the river, I felt
Exactly.
good. Like I sit down by there's a reason I live next to the sea, like I want to be able to see the sea. I want to see the sunset over the horizon. I want, all of that sort of beautiful stuff that we are blessed with here in New Zealand. Most of us can, get to a beautiful spot somewhere within 10 minutes of where we live. So, take advantage of that. Well, thank
Absolutely.
you
Yeah,
so
get
much.
your shoes off, go to the beach. We didn't talk about grounding, and
Yeah,
that's quite
earthing,
important
grounding.
for sun too, to not get sunburned, being connected to the earth when you're outside. So when you're at
Wow.
the beach in the strong sun, being grounded will actually help your skin's tolerance of UV.
Okay. You have to, no, before we wrap it up, you have to tell me why is that? How does that work?
This is because so when we're connected to the earth, we have a source of free electrons, and we're supporting that balance between oxidation and antioxidants, so the redox potential. We're helping the cell membranes, and we're also reinforcing that circadian rhythm through being connected to the Schumann resonance and the geomagnetic field of the earth. So just another, so it's like totally opposite from wearing sunglasses and sunscreen, being covered up, but getting sun on your face by being connected to the earth. Now we're kind of everything is synchronized. We're like, oh, the brain, or our evolutionary biology is like, oh yeah, okay, it's this time of day. I can feel it through the earth, for the magnetic field. I can feel it
Yeah.
through the sun and through the eyes. So
Well, it just makes a whole lot of sense if you think about things, eh? Like even without the whole science behind it, like you see it, you sense it, you feel it, that our society is completely, upside down in a lot of ways, and a
absolutely.
lot of it can be undone. And when I look at, like I look at my dad, who's unfortunately passed away 5 years ago, but he was a man of the earth. Like he was outside bare feet all day in the garden digging up something, planting something, growing something, hunting, shooting, fishing, all of that sort of stuff. But he was, unfortunately, he also smoked and ate a lot of fish and chips. That was Dad's downfall, unfortunately. But he was fit and strong and powerful right up until he had an aneurysm, and we have a very poor genetics in regards to that. But he lived in the circadian rhythm,
You
He
probably allowed him to
he
eat all
stayed
that fish and chips and smoke.
yeah, he got away with it for quite a
Yeah.
long time because that wasn't the way he should have been, but that was Dad. And but that circadian rhythm that he lived, that was, I think that's what kept him well for as long as it did, despite his smoking like a train, you know. So yeah, and when you look at peoples all around the planet that are still living in that sort of way, they just radiate a different
Absolutely.
frequency, really, don't you, than the rest of us stressed out, crazy people
Exactly.
in society. Well, Dr. Vanessa, I think you're absolutely wonderful. I'm so glad to have made your acquaintance, and I'm so glad to have found you. And I will be definitely calling on you for help with some of my clients as well. So, people, please do reach out to Vanessa if you want to find out more.
Great.
So.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.